All right, I'm going to call this recess meeting of Wise County Board of Supervisors to order. Today is January the 15th, 2026. Roll call, please.
Mr. Carter.
Here.
Rusty.
Here.
Steve.
Here.
Bob. Mr. Schoolcraft.
Here.
Mr. Rivers.
Here.
And I understand, Mr. Wainsford is still out, so he will be observing but not participating in today's meeting.
Rusty, would you say prayer for us, please? And Randy, would you lead us in the pledge? Since we don't have a flag, we've got a picture over here on the wall.
Yes. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, good morning, and thank you for everything you did us. Snow, just keep everybody safe on the highways, and I have to be out plowed. Just watch over those people as they're out keeping our roads clear so we can get around. Just keep them safe and out of the ditches. Forgive us of our sins. Thank you for being the one true and living God, the great I am. Thank you for coming to give yourself as a living sacrifice. And if we trust in you, we can have eternity with you. Remember our prayer requests. Forgive us of our sins. We fail you every day. In Jesus' name we pray, Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, floor is on for motion to approve the agenda. Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Mr. Schoolcraft, a second from Mr. Peters. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Our agenda is approved. Next is presentation. Dolores, I guess you're up to cash and investments.
Okay, I didn't really do a big presentation. I did pass out a copy of where we are as of today in cash balances. You'll see that we went from 17,700,000 in December down to 13,680,000 today. So we went down 4,086,000 in 1 month, or half a month, excuse me, in 15 days. As you can tell, the 13 million, we still owe the school 10 out of that. So that only leaves 3 million. So again, this is as the budget was prepared and where we're at right now, how much money we're going to have left by the end of the year. Now, depending on what we do with the reassessment and the tax rate, it could change somewhat with the May billing. But as of right now, staying on the course that we're on, you can tell that we won't make it till June. We'll have to have the billing to come in and get us out the hole again, like we did last year. And then we've still got July, August, and September with no income coming in, and then we'll use the tax collections in May to cover those months. So again, I know you think we've got that fund balance and that, we've got the, what is it called? The
School debt fund.
Well, school debt fund or the emergency fund, whatever y'all call it. I forgot what it's called. Anyway, so, but by the time we use that amount, whatever we have left in June, time we use it in July, August, and September, we're back to zero again. So we may start out with the rainy day fund, but 3 months later, it just kind of expenses. That rainy day fund is gone until we replenish again with the next tax season.
And not only the rainy day fund, all the funds are gone. Where I thought we had some balance in the school debt fund. We don't.
No.
We don't have anything in the economic development fund. We don't have anything in the blighted buildings fund. All those separate categories that we put committed money in, from my understanding right now, we don't have anything. All we have is the rainy day fund.
That's true. Like I said, I told you, meetings in the past, we said it, you all did right and committed it, but what we didn't do was uncommitted to spend it, but we spent it. Okay, just because you didn't go back and formally uncommit it, doesn't mean that it wasn't spent with the budgets, by the budgets going over it each year.
Or did you say that Ron was gonna wait on that 10 million for the schools?
Yes, he's gonna wait till June, or they're gonna try to hold off. We've been kind of working with each other here this last month and this month too.
Yes.
That's why I've not had to move any more money for him. So that's just general fund expenses that went down. That doesn't have anything to do with school dollars in that 4 million right there. But yeah, he is gonna try to hold off and get their money in June, which will be after the tax collection. But again, that means we start out in the hole by 10 million of what but if we spend the rest of this, which basically will be spent by June, just for normal expenses. Because remember, we plugged the budget by 7 million. Or actually, and then the revenue was incorrect. So we were really starting out $9 to $10 million in the hole. So that's where we'll be come June, is that $10 million in the hole. So we'll have to get the new billing in order to pay for the school that you budgeted in this year's budget. Does that make any sense? No. Like I said, we over budgeted by 10 million, including the 10 million to the schools. Actually, it was 14 million. We've already gave them some, but we still owe them 10. But by the time that we get to June, we will have spent this 13,600,000. So
We won't have anything after June.
well, that's
once you
we
pay.
will once we do the billing in May and June. We'll collect that. We changed the tax due date to June 10th.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, if we spend 13 million in the next 4.5 months, just on general fund, then the first 10 million off top of our tax collections will go to the school.
Yeah.
So that's going to reduce what our rainy day fund is come June 30th.
Yes.
And I'm calling the fund balance your cash fund balance. Most governments, especially around here, always operates on cash basis. The only thing different when you hear the auditor talk about the unfunded fund balance and that, or uncommitted fund balance, that's because it's got receivables in it. As of June 30th, I have to book what Doug is not even going to give me assessments for until September on the personal property. That billing, because of the way the audit goes, you've got the first half of billing and second half of billing. It is for 26 taxes, and it goes across our fiscal year. So I have to book as of June 30th, however much we're going to bill in October or November now. And that's what gets that fund balance. It looks higher on your financial statement than in reality, because by the time we got to October, we'd already spent all the other fund balance, getting to that point. So all we had, and all the receivables I'd already collected, and we still only had 17 million in the bank.
We changed the date on collections. Back that a couple weeks back.
We said from May 31st, we changed it to May 10th, or June 10th and November 10th.
Does that give us more time to actually figure things out instead of rushing today or the next week or something?
No, Doug still has to have the tax rate in order to give me the book, in order for me to have the tax tickets prepared and go
About
out.
a couple more weeks, should that give us a couple more weeks?
Well, that's one reason we did move it, because Doug's going to be more rushed to get the personal property. Real estate's no problem. We've always done that with real estate. He always gave me the book on April 1st, and we were pushed to get them out. I like to give the people at least 30 days to get it. But doing the half of the personal property this year for the first time, Doug is under the gun more to get those prepared. Usually he didn't have those till September 1st. Now he's got to get them ready by, I think I said April.
Yeah.
May. I gotta have them at least by the end of April, and that would only give me a month to get them. I have to get a computer coordinated together. I have to get them to the printers. I have to get them mailed. So it takes me about 2 weeks to get them from him to the mail. So, and to give them 30 days, then I basically need them by the first week of May, to put in the mail, basically. So that's the reason we're rushed more on your tax tick or your rates this year. It's because of that extra billing. And I'm gonna be doing it with one less employee also. So we're gonna be a little tight in my office because I have one retiring. So I'm not rehiring right now. But anyway, that's basically where I'm at today. I did this just this morning for you. So is there any other questions about it?
Anybody have questions? Dolores, I've got 2 thoughts, I guess. Right now, as you've already said, we have collections twice a year. If we gave our citizens the options of paying monthly, so that revenue would come in at a more steady stream.
If
Is
we
that
do-
an option we could?
What do you say monthly? What are we doing? monthly?
Collection monthly, the citizens have an option to rather than pay twice a year or once a year, they can pay every month.
Oh, yes, we have it set up that we have the forms on the computer, on the website. You can either make a payment plan. If you want to hold out so much money, you can send it directly to us. We'll put it in prepaid for you, or we will directly take it out of your bank accounts. Set it up so it's just an automatic deduction each month. That is really growing popular right now because a lot of people like that. So by the time we estimate what the tax will be, so by the time we get to the tax billing, they're already got their money saved up, ready to go.
Should we currently put that on tax sheet when it's sent out, that
It is.
this would be your payment per month? I don't believe it is.
Oh, no, we don't put it on there. It's just a matter of taking it,
I
dividing
really
it by
put
the
it
months.
on there, we may encourage more people to select that option.
Especially if there's a discount.
That's the other thing I'm
No.
wondering beyond that. What'd you say?
It's-
Especially if there was a discount,
I stood there.
especially if there was a discount.
Well, that's where I was gonna get to, if you pay it all one time, if you get a discount,
Well,
maybe $50.
they had that on the books one time before, and encouraged people to pay once a time. It lasted about 2 months, I think. Because when I first came in the office, I found it still in the ordinances, that it hadn't been taken out. It's just, I don't know, I mean, that's allowing people to take it out, but all you're doing is taking money away from your tax collections. I mean, just because people paid early, I would rather make sure I had money for both halves of the budget than just less amount the first, or get it all in the first half. It's still gonna have to be with your budget, how you budget to spend it, no matter how I collect it.
Well, if you could collect more monthly, then maybe it would help your cash flow.
Well, you're not gonna collect more money, you're just gonna collect a little bit sooner.
You're gonna collect a little bit sooner, it should help you on cash flow. A little bit.
Well, and we never really had this trouble before when I had money in the bank. It wasn't till the last couple months, or last 3 years, we have overspent so much. We used all that padding I had. I never had to worry about making it till June for cash flow. This is a new thing we're in right now. Simply because we have overspent the last 3 years with no tax increases, no anything. So we have been taking care of all the expenditures with raises and everything else for the last, you all haven't raised taxes in 9 years. So we have used every bit of the funds that I had saved up. Now we're living paycheck to paycheck, so to speak. So yeah, we may get it in earlier and we may get it more evenly if you did it monthly, but still it's got to last till the end. And if it's just a matter, I can hold on to it and put it in investments, but if you're gonna cut me by a percentage discount, then there goes the interest I'm gonna earn on it. So, it's just kind of a wash, I guess, where, like I said, the money would be there. But it just worries me that I would rather be fixated on our budget, getting it down below the taxes coming in, instead of just trying to collect it sooner just to cover that spending.
I'm just trying to get.
Yeah, and I realize that,
You
yeah.
and-
And I'm just trying to be, blunt and honest,
That's what we need.
I think, like I said, we've never really had this problem because, we always had at least 20, I think when I first came in, we had 30 million sitting there. And over the years where we have kept budgets going, but not increased taxes, it simply used all those reserves. It's like if you had a savings account and you kept pulling it out to live on, sooner or later that savings account's empty. And that's what we have now is an empty savings account. I have no more money to draw out of.
The rainy day fund is really low, the rainy day fund.
Well, right now you've got 13 million in your rainy
But once
day
you give
fund.
the
And that's,
10 million,
you still got 20 million left or 30 million in expenditures to go to the next 4.5, 5 months.
so once we give the school system the 10 million, then what we gonna live on July, August, and September?
Whatever's left out of that tax billing that we do in May and June. So if we bill and I collect, I think it usually runs about 17, 18 million. If we use 10 million, we'll have 7, 8 million, which is what I put on that paper.
Yeah.
That I estimated 8 million. Plus then I put the extra bump in personal property taxes, giving you that allocation that was not in the budget.
Yeah.
So that's what brings us up to that 11 million that I'm estimating that we'll have at the end of June. But that is your right. That would be all rainy day funds and all funds. That's all you have. Okay.
The other question I have,
Okay.
on the tax tickets that we send out, if we could show what percentage is going to different departments, how much is going to schools, how much is going to the sheriff, how much is going to social services, and pick 5 or 6 major categories and say this is the percentage of your tax dollars that's going to provide you these services. I think the more the citizens realize how their money is being spent, it may impact how they feel about a tax increase.
Yes, and that is on some people's tax tickets. But what you have to remember, that the tax tickets are going out in April and May, and you all have not set the budget yet. So either you'd have to use the prior year budget of how you spent it, which you could do. I mean, you could say this last year, this is the percentages of everything that you used in each department, but you couldn't use your current numbers
Or
of
we
the
could
current
say
budget.
this is percentage what school's gonna get every year, this is what percentage the sheriff's gonna get every year. We could set a percentage for our departments. Out
Well,
of
you
our
could.
revenue, this,
That's your choice too. I'm just saying, as far as using, to say we got a $70 million budget, this is how we're spending it. That's gonna change every year with your budget. You do the percentages based on your total
but
budget.
if we set a percentage, it would change the numbers, but the percentage stay the same.
And that'd be okay if you could control those expenditures, but you've got a lot of things that'll come across one time a year. And it may not be in last year, but it's gonna be in this year budget. Then it'll drop off and not be in the next. It just, your budget's going to vary, be hard pressed to keep every department to the same percentage. It'd be close.
All I'm trying to do is get transparency, so our citizens.
Yeah.
know the money.
And I'll be fine with it. I'll put that using the last year's figures, if that's what you want us to do. We'll come up with the percentages.
I'm just following.
But
out
you're just not
the
gonna have time this year.
As a board, we need to decide if that's good or bad. I'm just throwing that out.
Okay. I mean, like I said, you let me know and however you want to do it. I'm just saying because we won't have the actual budget approved and everything till May or June probably, then I'll already have to have the tickets out before you get those percentages.
Yeah.
But now I can use
You can
last
use
year's
last year.
percentages and put them on there.
When we do our budget, we can put that on our website. You can do that as part of our presentations. You can say, we want this, this, and this, and when we advertise a budget, we know what that budget's supposed to be.
Yes.
We can, do that chart and have that information. That would be a part of our workshops that we will be doing for the upcoming year. We've got those numbers for our budget now. We can know those budgets from prior budgets.
And you can put it on the website. People could go on there and see it at any time. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. It's just a matter of using a year-old number versus a current year or upcoming year. We wouldn't be able to have that.
Anybody else have questions, comments?
Good. All right, thank you.
Okay, new business, discussion of setting the tax rate for next year. Andre, who's gonna take the lead?
Well, I'll just procedurally, if we don't set the tax rate today, which we probably will not, I'll be asking the board to recess this meeting to actually set that rate. We have to have 2 weeks so we can advertise. So I would need that rate by the end of January. I think the last day may be the 30th, that we can make our advertisement requirements in the paper for a public hearing on our February 12th meeting date. And I understand that we need to have a tax rate set by that February date. So we've got a couple weeks to figure out what that rate will be. I know that we've seen the reassessment figures. The commissioner is here to address those. I know we've looked at different projections as far as our effective rate with the reassessment numbers is 55 cents. We're at 69. What our advertisement has to be is to explain that, and this is by law, we have to advertise that we've had a reassessment. 55 cents is the effective rate to keep status quo. And that we're at 69. So theoretically, you're going back to 55. So if we want to keep it anything higher than 55 cents, we have to have an advertisement. So if that's 60, 65, we're currently at 69. Andre has the numbers of what that brings in, and I think maybe even the commissioner has looked at those. If we stay at 69, what it is at anything less, anything between 55 and 69, what a penny is. We've looked at what that projected number would be for a real estate, but we also have to set the other tax rates. And personal property, machinery tools versus capital. So I think that we have some numbers today to look over those to see what our revenue projection would be. And that's part of the puzzle. The other part is our expenditures. We know what our budget is right now that Dolores had talked about between January and June. We know what we've got. We know there's a billing in there depending on what comes in from that. So that's kind of the pieces we've got out there. Andre's got some detail. I think there's questions. I know we've gotten several questions. So I think Andre, you want to talk about where we're at with our budget and what this assessment would be, what it would bring in, and then we can know where we're at, where we would be if we don't change it, and what that does to our budget numbers, and then anything in between to see where we're going.
I think we handed out a calculation on a few different scenarios as far as the potential increases for your consideration that JH had developed. If you want to expand on any of that, JH, what we, with tremendous help from Dolores, we worked on just an estimate, and we're taking the position we really should not compare what we project as far as 27 fiscal year budget to this year's budget, we got to solely look on what do we anticipate collecting in 27. Based on those numbers, and we had preliminary discussions a couple days ago at the full 69-cent reassessment rate. And given that, and Dolores and I had looked through some things in our current projections for this fiscal year that we knew we needed to adjust, some things that were over budgeted. And taking those into consideration, even at the full 69 cents, you're still, and these are rough numbers, you're still going to be about $2 million in the deficit based on current spending levels with expenditures. Is that realistic? Probably not. That's what we know today. There'll be a lot of information coming in. There's a meeting next week at the regional jail. We should get some preliminary numbers there. Yet we've seen over the years what you get in January, February ultimately changes come June, reconciliation time. There's a possibility, we could end up owing the jail money. Depends on trends, depends on population. So there's a lot of variables, but again, we're at $2 million in the deficit. So based on what Dolores has presented, we know there's not an option to go back to general fund to bridge that gap. So that would have to be looked at as far as options. How do we bridge that gap? Now, again, that was at the full 69 cents, and that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. I know that. So if you start ratcheting that down, and based on, I think there was some discussion about what is the value of a penny. You're on real estate, and if I say something wrong, Doug can correct me, but roughly $242,000 on 1 cent value of real estate. And then with Public Service Corp, roughly 100,000, so you're about 342,000. So if you're at a $2 million deficit, every cent you decrease from 69-cent reassessment values, add roughly 342 cents, what you're going to need to cover the deficit. Does that make sense to everyone? So that's kind of where we are. And I know Jake spent a lot of time on a couple different scenarios on that. This is what it gets us at this level. If you want to expand on that. And
Okay, I prepared a spreadsheet. I think Andre passed it out. I talked to Doug and Dolores, Andre and Karen about this. And one of the things I was thinking about, rather than just increasing real estate, maybe we want to look at all these categories that we have taxing authority over. And I did a proposal on just what one penny would bring in each of these categories that we have a taxing authority on. And I just, personal property, vehicles, I just took that a penny. We could change that to 10 cents. We could make any changes, but you could use this table to determine what one penny would add to the overall budget. Now, when I first did it, talking to Doug, I thought we were going to get 1.4 million Public Service Corporation in November. But based on the different tax rates here, that scenario changes. So this morning, Doug, and I thought, Doug, again, if I misspeak, you correct me, but my numbers will change. The 59-cent would go down, we would only collect 1.595 million. The 60 cents, we would only collect 2.194 million. And then we just jumped up to the last category, the 63 cents, and that would bring us up 4.3 million. And that's with 1 cent. Well, that's taking real estate to 63 cents, and it's increasing each of the other categories by 1 cent. So you could adjust those other categories by a different amount, and it would change this projection. But I guess kind of where I was coming from when I developed the spreadsheet, I feel like we need to know what our revenue is going to be, and we've got to live with it. that this is gonna be all. We're not, in my opinion, we're not gonna be able to ask the departments, what do you want? Give us a projection. We're gonna have to say, here's the revenue we have, here's what you can spend, and you've got to manage your own budget. That's kind of where I see us at this point.
Question.
I've got, just a minute, I've got another question. And I've probably said this before, but I was looking, if we take these increases, and Andre's kind of touched on it, it's kind of a moving target right now. We don't know what's gonna go up, what's gonna go down. But if I looked last night and I found 4 different scenarios. I found that on page 60 on our website, we're showing that our expenditures are, our revenues and expenditures are at 83,301,401. But if you look at page 3, the revenue we're taking in, well, if you look at page 3 on the website, the revenue is 73,399,000. So that's a $10 million difference. If you look at the information that Dolores gave us in her cash value, it's showing expenditures at 74,273,000. If you look at what was in our package in December, it shows that the revenue tracking is 75,406,779. So I've got 4 different numbers, and we've got to add, if we increase these taxes, we got to know what we're adding it to. And I'm sitting here right now, I don't know what we add it to. I see Laura's kind of has her hand up back there. But to me, if we don't know that, we can't set a budget. Laura,
Well, one thing, if you remember, I handed out that paper last year, you have it there in the blue. The revenue, I gave you some that I know that adjustments need to be made. We overstated your real estate taxes last year, and you overstated the Public Service Corporation by 1.8 million, about $1 million in real estate. So that's 2.8 million that's, we're not gonna collect. That needs to come off your budget. Yes, that one. But the difference in the numbers on the different pages, I was just thinking probably what that is one is your general fund on the 3rd page or whatever you said. And then when you got to the back, more back, that would be with your special revenue funds, which include your co-road fund and everything.
does that include grants?
Yes, grants are all in your general fund.
So they would be on page 3.
That's mixed with your revenue.
Some would be included in general fund. We do have grants that, for instance, one of the PSA projects, the water and sewer projects are in special revenue funds.
Yeah, they're in capital projects fund.
That's the big deal. The 70-some million on the revenue and expenses, that's the general fund budget. But with every other fund combined, that's where you're seeing the difference in 80 million, 83 million.
So the question I have, can we have a special category to put grants in? Right now, I think grants are spread out through all the different departments that receive grants. Could we put them in one place in the budget so we can look and track them more?
Yeah,
Yes, I could set those up in special revenue funds, just like the co-road and everything is set up in special revenue funds. I can do the same thing, and we could pull the revenue out of the general fund and the expenditures. But we will have to see, who else got grants
Right.
coming in, and then I will place them over in those special revenue at that time, and then they will not be included in our general fund budget revenue or expenditures. So if there's police
Like I said,
department,
I'm
we'll
just
go
throwing
over.
out ideas, but to me, that would help me.
And that's fine. It's just a matter of them classifying it for me on the invoices. So when we run it, I know to put them, we know to put them in that revenue, special revenue fund. Well, I mean, we've got like 25 on the books now. So a few more is not going to kill me. That's the way we handle a lot of different things that have to maintain a balance so you can see what's left. That will allow us to see when the revenue comes in and what we're spending out of that grant. And if we spend money out of the grant and the revenue don't come in, it's right there for us to see. Right now, it's all kind of convoluted in that general fund budget. It's about impossible to actually see. You can see if nothing's on that revenue line item, but you can't really see if they've actually expended it or not because it's mixed in with the other general fund expenditures.
So where do we think we are at the bottom line? Are we closer to 73 million or closer to 74 million?
I think the original budget was 73,
Right.
but as you all get each month, in your board packets, there's budget amendments. So it would be closer to the
74.
yes. So if you went back in your budget package, you could see anything that was an amendment to 110 would increase our budget by those amounts. And then of course, there's also budget amendments to these project funds.
Yeah, and that's another reason for your change each time is because you all are approving budget amendments. Every time we do that, then that changes those budget figures by those amounts. That's why it's kind of just trying to keep up with it, why there are so many changes. That's usually due to that. And one thing we got to keep in mind, there are some expenses that's in our budget this year that we know are not going to be in next year's budget. So when we look at what the actual revenue or what the actual budget is, we need to make sure we take those things out, like the extra real estate taxes that's budgeted in there that are not coming in, the extra public service. So those are amounts we have to reduce our budget going in the front. Okay, we're not really going to need that 74 million, or we're really not going to collect on that 74 million. That's got 7 million just in prior period carry forward, and that's not coming in. So we need to look at a realistic budget amount, which would be closer to about 64 million instead of 74, because we're about 10 million over. You take the 7 million plus the 2.8 million for the revenue discrepancies, that's 10 million. So
one other thing that I would add that is relevant for the next 3 years is the restructured debt amount. So that is a reduction that we'll see through 2028, but you have to keep at the forefront. That's temporary. So that will bump back up, and we can't rely on it. So you just emphasize that you have to stay on pace with spending checks and what you're going to receive in revenue. And there's, as we talked the other day, there's the bond issuing for the construction here that's taking place with the roof, HVAC, some other things. That's something to be considered. Those are on interest-only payments right now until that matures. And that's in November of 2027, which would be in fiscal 28. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
that was 4 million.
And one thing that I learned this week, because I was trying to get this realistic number where we are, where do we start? And I thought that I could take between $500,000 and $750,000 out of these expenditures, out of the budget for the 10 vehicles we purchased for the sheriff in this current budget. But I found out from Andre that we can't take that amount out. That was divided, well, we're doing it in payments like the lease payment. And Andre, what was that number we could only, most amount we could take out?
So what is falling off debt service at the end of this fiscal year is about $80,000. 80,000. There was all the payments from the inception of going back to 2020, 21, structure on those. We got a loan either on a 3 or 5 year term. 3-year vehicles were for the financing of the patrol vehicles. We knew that would have the most service time, and those would need to be replaced earlier. The other admin type vehicles were on terms. All of those have paid out at this point. So anything that has been authorized since that point are 3-year terms, semi-annual payments. There's one of the borrowings from and we had talked about is a monthly payment. There's about 3 schedules, I think, that we currently have committed to, and will run through, as of today, 2028. So the 10 vehicles that were budgeted for and approved for this fiscal year, we had budgeted roughly based on what projections on the cost would be at the time, $800,000. It ended up being $750,000. And those were 2 payments at $133,000. Because of the closing timing of the loan, we will only see one of those payments, which is due next month. It's $133,000. So we're still on the liable for the full payment on the term of the loan. That's a little bit of relief as far as this fiscal year goes. But anything that has been approved, committed, is in debt service going forward through 2028. And those do drop off. I'd have to look at the actual schedules. We have those schedules on the audit, what's due. But from the inception of the purchase of these cars, that's how everything was set up. Nothing was purchased outright. There's been confusion about were these leases. No, they were not leases. They were purchases. That was a financing term only. We initially we would outlay the money to the dealership that was awarded the bid and then ask for reimbursement from the financing company, and then we were making payments on it.
Yet we added 800,000 to our budget for those, but we're only gonna spend 165 or something, 133?
The cost on the purchase of the vehicles was budgeted at a debt service of $800,000. That was not our debt service. So it was budgeted, I think, at about $280,000 in debt service for the purchase of $800,000 worth of vehicles. That's how it's budgeted.
Each year.
And each year throughout that term, it ended up not being that much because we didn't borrow as much. And then, like I said, we'll get the relief of we only have one of the semi-annual payments that are due this fiscal year because of the timing and closing of the loan. I will add, we've not received any of those vehicles yet.
We don't see any yet.
Well, it takes care of next year's. We don't need to add that.
That's what I was trying to reduce the funds by, but I couldn't reduce it by as much as I was hoping we could. Well, while we're talking about vehicles, one thing that maybe go back to this spreadsheet that I prepared. By doing the twice a year personal property, we're going to do a one-time bump this spring of between 3.1 and 3.2 million. If we increase vehicle personal property by 1 cent, that's going to up that 3.1, 3.2. It's going to bring in some more revenue this spring. Plus, it's going to increase our revenue for FY27. So that was one reason I was thinking about, let's don't put it all on real estate, but spread it out through some of our other tax areas. And it will help us this spring, plus it will help us in the next year's budget. So and to me, I had to do it simple so I could understand it. That's why I just wanted to use 1 cent in each one of these categories to see what opinion would bring us, and then let's see where we need to be.
One question, this might be for Mr. Mullins. Somebody had mentioned that we're mailing out a bunch of tax tickets for properties that we'll never collect on. Did we get those off the book? Does that make us look like we've got more we can collect than we actually really would?
If they're anything but real estate, they stay on the books for 5 years and fall off on the 6th year. So I delete them at that time. Real estate stays on the book for 20 years until they fall off. But I mean, like I said, they're just in your receivables, but they'll fall off each year. That's why I said you really can't look at those receivables as being true figures because there's a lot of uncollectibles in there. But as long as you're just looking at actual dollar collection wise, then you're good. But when you start trying to look at the receivables, you know, I know right now in 25, I think we were talking about it, I looked at it in 25, I have 292,000 that I think only 17,000 is collectible out of. But unless Doug takes them off or I come to you all to take them off, they'll sit there for 5 years until they fall off.
And so what happened several years ago, the treasurer and I worked together to actually eliminate a lot of that value and quote uncollectible taxes. And she's right, you can't collect it. If for instance, a coal company has moved out over the years, we saw a lot of that in M&T, and we were able to remove millions of dollars worth of value. So yeah, that's a very valid point and something that, you know, that we try to work on each year, and you know, that's.
That was M&T that I was talking about with the high balance. There's a lot of companies in there that are, you know, it's mostly statutory assessments that for each year. But they will fall off, but it'll just take a while. But I can bring them to you all as a group and see if you want to go ahead and write them off. Like I said, it is costing me to bill them. It's costing me to try to call around finding somebody to talk to collect from when there's nobody there, nobody to collect.
Yeah,
So it's creating more work
we
for both of
don't. Yeah, we don't have a problem at all cleaning all that up, because you're right. What you just said is exactly right. It's more work for us as we
Yes.
roll that assessment over. We'd rather get that off the books too. So that's something that
Because each year I'm sending out multiple tax tickets, including the originals for each year, plus the delinquent bills. And then, you know, we got dual tickets and everything else. That's a lot of tickets and postage that I'm paying. And I have to mail out the tax bills. I have no choice.
So bring us the list and we'll just vote them off. Save money.
Which I can bring you all a list of everything that me and my staff, and we talked to Doug about that we think is bad. We've got, you know, there's different categories that we can do according to statute, code section, that you all can vote to, for me to remove, or Doug would remove, and then it would just come off of our books, which would save, like I said, on us trying to, you know, if a place has been burnt down for 15 years and we're still assessing it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep, but we do have some of that. So it really does need to be cleaned up, but it's just a matter of taking the time to get it. You know, we call everywhere trying to find somebody, because I think Doug has a requirement that they have to come in and sign a form that they're out of business, but we can't find anybody to come in and sign that form. So it's kind of like, you know, we're caught in a quagmire that we can't, you know, that you can't get out of.
Doris, do you have people that just absolutely just won't pay and you have to do the DMV stop? I mean, do you have a percentage of people that just don't make plans for for a payment?
Well, in real estate, you know, we have a sale every November and every March, around March, April, I guess. So, you know, usually between the attorneys that I have in Richmond that does the collections on those, if they're behind in real estate, we usually collect everything. If not, we put it up for sale and sell it that way. Now, the personal property, those kind of things, we usually collect about all of them, unless it's like a coal company or something and I can't grab a hold of them some way. But normal citizens, no, I will have them through the DMV stops or other ways, bank accounts, that kind of thing. Usually we get pretty close to good collection rates on that. And, you know, real estate, I guess I'm about 98.50 or almost 99%.
Yeah.
So, you know, 1% is things that maybe been on there for 15 years. Somebody died, nobody, you know, is paying the taxes. So until I get it to the point, we have to go through the courts and all that kind of stuff. Until I get it to that point and get it on the judicial sales, it kind of stays there.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we just kind of keep adding to it. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just another example of that. over the years, over the past 20 years or so, we've had situations where companies, corporations have come in, they've gotten the incentives and the deal, and they locate here, and once the money runs out, then we can't find them, and they're still on the books. And so those kinds of situations are very frustrating. You hate to remove it from the books because they came in and in my humble opinion, in some situations, not all, maybe exploited the incentives. And I know you got to take chances on things. I'm not here to condemn. I'm just saying that in those situations, we have been left holding the bag in terms of the taxes that maybe were never paid or partly paid. And so at some point in time, we have written them off the books reluctantly because we didn't get, and that's the reason for your consideration. And I know we've talked a little bit to administration about this over the years, and I think they're probably receptive to this. Our position has always been escrow those taxes so that you're getting them up front instead of part of the deal. You want to come in and take the incentives, getting over out of my jurisdiction. But if you want to come in and realize the incentives, then you're paying the taxes as you go. And so things like that would help mitigate the situation.
And basically what he's talking about is a lot of times there are properties that IDAs came in or brought in and gave the incentive. And then when they leave, the property reverts back to the IDA. But of course, it's non-taxable. So we're sitting here with this tax ticket that, is just waiting to fall off. It goes from, but the property's still here. It's just the owner that had it for those 3 years has got it.
That's correct.
So that's the kind that we're talking about that we have to. And those are usually a lot larger dollars.
It's like living rent-free on Wise County for 3 years or 5 years or 2 years.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I've got 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
When we talk about budgets, and we talk about, you mentioned, we're going to give each department a certain amount. What can we do to make sure that if we budget them some department $500,000 and they spend $800,000, what can we do? Somebody that goes over there. Is there any teeth in the matter, or are we just stuck with it, or?
They wouldn't have, they would just have a certain amount. If they went over it, they wouldn't have the money to go over it, wouldn't they?
Well, Rusty's bringing up a good point. I don't know if I've shared it with the board or not, but I went through our expenditures that was in our December package. And if you look at those, I haven't counted them, but and I printed off maybe an Excel spreadsheet out of it, and I highlighted in red the ones that had already spent over 50% of their budget. And as I discussed with the administration Monday this week, I think it was, some of them are already zero, and we've still got 6 months to go. And I found out that some of those may have been grants or special items that may not include salaries and things that they have to continue paying for the rest of this year. But if you look at what was in our December package, there's several areas where they have less than 50% left. Some of them down to zero. And that's concerning. Rusty, somebody else has to give you an answer.
Well, if we're looking at $500,000 and somebody's spent 800,000, they've got $500,000. That's it. We don't pay the other.
I guess my question would be, can we as a board make a motion that once they have to spend more that's in their budget, that request has to come to this board before we approve any funding beyond what was budgeted to them?
Yeah.
Now I thought about that too, Rusty. That's the only answer I have.
Well,
I'll throw that out for discussion.
I will say that your computer system won't allow those expenditures to go through unless they're overridden. Andre or whoever's approving them would have to say, okay, this is coming through and we don't have the budget in there for it. So if you override it, then it comes to me as a check. But you can say no and stop it there. And yes, if they're going to spend over their budget, it has to be a budget amendment. So there is a formal process to stop that. And we do, I think Mike used to approve all of them. Andre, are you doing it now?
As she said, the computer system, and we have tried to hammer this home. This is, at the very least, as far as a control measure, is if it's not in your budget, you cannot generate a PO for it. We will not approve it.
Right.
And that's to say, hey, again, just because it's in your budget doesn't mean you need to spend it as well.
Yeah.
But trying to hammer that home that if anybody is coming to us with something that has not been entered into the PO system, it is not going to be approved, because we do not want to do overrides. Now, do we have to do some sometimes? Yes, we have to. There's no getting around that. But as far as the normal PO invoice system, that's pretty good control. Where we don't have control, which I don't like, and I'm not sure what the solution to this other than to suspend usage, is our credit cards. And that's, it's spent sometimes. People are going to spend it. The end user spending the card or using the card, they may not know what's in the budget. But is there funds? I mean, you see that as a control problem, and I really don't know if you have a solution other than gather up credit cards.
Well, some of us have very low amounts that we can spend on the
Right,
credit card.
Right.
So
There are limits on the cards, but there is high usage. If you see the
some departments have
payments
more
payable
credit
each
cards.
month and the volume that goes through that. So, we have really tried to push back on, this is not going to be paid unless you have approved funds in your
Well,
budget.
that will be on the department heads. If they can't control their cards, then maybe somebody else needs to be department head.
Do they know their limits though?
On the cards,
They do.
on the cards, but that doesn't necessarily correlate with what you have budgeted to spend. And what I'll say about what percentage somebody may have, and we discussed a little bit of those, and every situation could have a different story to go along with it. But for example, we have several budgets that don't necessarily have department heads. For example, fire and EMS. Okay, we fund fire and EMS, and we approve, you guys approve an allocation to these guys, and we estimate the cost of line of duty act insurance. So that could be, and I think that was the case in that particular example where they were over budget on what was spent out of that budget, but it came in and, hey, do they have more volunteers in their volunteer fire? Did the rates go up? So you have instances like that. You have other departments that are not, they're county supplemented. As examples, some of the court services, those are not county employees, but they have an allocation for office supplies. They may spend, the front end of the year, 90% of their budget, 60% of their budget. And then they don't have anything else to spend. They know that, but those are just some, I guess, high level
But there is
examples.
some manager that's overseeing that, but.
Yeah, I mean, there is
It's not like fire and rescue.
right. There is a physical person, but that's just an example without really digging into every individual case of, why those percentages. I mean, ideally you would want to think, okay, everybody's at 50% and has 50% remaining. That may not be the case. So there's variables, and that's kind of my comments on that.
Couple things just that I thought about on the spreadsheet that I made that was passed out. Data centers, we can't increase that because we set an incentive rate on 24 cents. My understanding that we can't increase that. You see what data centers, the levy, what it's bringing in. And I started out with adding a penny to that, but I got corrected that we can't do that. So there's a reason that there's a zero there. We can't, that's one thing that we can't, unless we change our incentive program. And I'm not sure we want to do that.
How long is that
That's
good
one
for?
person's opinion.
How long is that 24/6 good for? 5 years, 10 years?
Until you change it.
That's what I'm saying. We could change it, but
Can we rely on that and take it to the bank?
We got places out the other end of the state charging $5, and we're charging 24 cents. I know that's to bring them in, but we're not beating the door down with people coming in at 24 cents.
but look at the levy.
I know.
Look how much it's bringing us in. And that was shocking to me when I saw that levy. The other thing, and I want to throw this out because if I'm saying it wrong, I want Dolores or Andre or Doug, somebody to help me here. But as I heard what Andre was saying, that we need to come up with $2 million. To do that, we would have to do the 60 cent on real estate and then these additional pennies that I've got now, the categories. That only gets us to 2.1 million. That barely gets us to where you're under saying we need to bring in $2 million.
Sorry.
I need help.
Okay.
I need some-
That
Andre,
$2
you
million,
got this paper with you?
Wait, I'm going, I'm gonna get to that.
the 2 million was predicated by the fact that you would have bid for 69 cents reassessment, which I know that has to be decided. One thing I would add too is, I mean, some things, you know, we were, Dolores and I did include this in our, you know, rough projection, but, you know, there's very little I know about expenses at this point in 27. It's very, very early in the game. I mentioned the regional jail preliminary numbers, the possibility for next week. Bob and I should be attending that. One thing I do know for sure, the registrar has a mandate on election equipment that's projected at $300,000. And then, you know, we talk about a lot of things that we have to pay for. That's something we have to pay. And it's just sort of backpedaling a little bit on Dolores's presentation. I mean, it looks like, I mean, if you look at this month, it's like, where in the world did you spend, you know, $4 million? We have the quarterly allocations that, you know, those at the quarter, September, July, December, you know, April, we're going to have heavy commitments on, you know, not that schools aren't involved in that, but regional jail and everything that's on the quarterly allotments that we fund, that we are either mandated or contractually entered into an agreement that we have to fund. So it's not, and of course our payroll is mingled in that as well. So those are things that I don't think is frivolous. Those are not frivolous spending. Those are mandated expenditures. So,
We don't know what insurance will cost next year, do we?
no, and I mean, I would be shocked if it doesn't increase.
Yeah.
And another thing, our general liability insurance and workers' comp. Our workers' comp is growing exponentially that you have limited control over. It's driven by your payroll numbers, but it's also driven by your incident rate. And we have had over the last few years, you know, a couple of things that those things happen, accidents happen, but we pay for them.
Dolores was holding up her paper back there, but the other thing that I want to lay on the table is Dolores is saying rather than 74 or 73, we're down to 60. That's $10 million. With all the projections I made here, we're not going to bring in $10 million. The most I projected is 4. So we've got some major decisions to make. I personally don't see how we can get to $10 million. I don't see it.
If I may, Andre and I did this yesterday evening. Andre, you got how much cents that we did?
I
We
think
just
this
did some
was
rough numbers, taking the
based on
increase
60.
on the 63 cents, right? 63 cents on the real estate, taking it down to 63 or up, whichever way you want to look at, and then 3 cents on your personal property. That would give us, and a few other changes that I made to interest and things like that that I know is going to be affected. That would bring us to 67,392,600. Now, the expenditures, starting with, after I take out the debt restructuring and the construction proceeds, we're looking at 71,480,000. You add the 300,000 for the equipment we know of, that's going to bring us down to about, or bring us up to 71,700, basically. So even at 63 rate and 3 cents on the personal property and machinery and tools and everything, we're still using the budget, the actual budget from this year minus things we know, we're still 4,307,000 in the hole. And that's about as close as Andre and I putting our heads together trying to come up with, wasn't it, Andre?
I guess what I'm gonna say is, we have heard the citizens a couple weeks ago talk about we have to cut. And I think we have to cut. And to make this balance, that's why I got back to saying we're gonna have to tell each department, this is the amount you have, and we can't go over it. And so we won't specifically say you got to cut off employees or you got to cut down office expenses. I think what we do is tell each department, this is the amount of money you've got in your budget, you've got to live with. And then that gets back to, if there's, I have to overspend, they have to come to the board and ask for authority to do that. And even then, with the 3 cents, and for that's going to put us, it's going to be some significant cuts.
Yeah, like I said, 4,700,000 out of just local, or out of the expenditures of what we've spent this year in the budget. So that's quite a bit for each department. If you're going to try to divide that up and try to break even, you got to have a balanced budget. Before we took money out of prior period fund balance, we can't do that this time. So somehow you have to get to a balanced budget. Either you fudge on your revenue and make it higher, or you've got to get those expenditures down. We do not want to fudge on revenue again and put more revenue in the budget that we're actually going to collect. Please don't do that to me. What we need to do is get those expenditures down, and then if we find we get more money, you can raise them during the year. That's what I tried to say about the cuts. Let's start cutting, and then if we get to the point we have money at the end, then they can get those things they needed. And that's just my opinion as a department head. That's what I usually do anyway. But I think that's what you have to look at. Somehow we're going to have to cover about close to $5 million if you do those tax increases. Right, Andre? Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's minimal because
Yeah, that's
there's so many unknowns.
Plus, it could be a state mandated pay increase. Yeah.
Doesn't include that.
Which is, I was talking 2%, that could go.
Yes, this is just on the expenditures that we have in the department right now.
Or there could be a health insurance spike, you never know.
There will be,
There would be.
there will be, the insurance will go up. And the sad thing about a mandated increase is we're never fully funded for that. The percentage increase and any kind of benefits, so we better hope there's not a mandated increase.
Things that are budget.
Yeah.
It may not be as much as last year, but further with that.
It will be.
And this is what I,
It's right there.
earlier in the week, when I met with the administration. Once we set this tax rate, we've got to live with it. And we've got to June to massage the budget and make things work with the budget. So once we set this tax rate, that's all the money we're going to have to prepare that budget with. So this is really the most critical, in my opinion, the most critical decision we have to make. I want to be kind of fair.
Yeah.
And spread it across the board as much as we can. Let machinery and tools, let business capital, let some of these other categories contribute to our revenue source.
It's a critical time.
And that's why I think Karen said earlier, I don't feel comfortable with coming in here today and setting the tax rate. I think we need to take everything we've heard, massage it, and come back, recess this meeting, and come back before the end of January to set the actual tax rate so that it can be advertised in the paper, and so we can be prepared for a public hearing.
How long do you have to say that? Karen, 2 weeks?
The deadline would be the 30th. That gives us the advertisement periods of time that we need before our February meeting. And we'd have to be ready to act after the public hearing that night. And that would be setting all the rates, the personal property, everything that we need to do, and the real estate. And I know Doug is here. He's got a program that we've been able to look at that you can add a penny here and look to see what it does, and it will tell you your bottom line. We've done some very ballpark figures is what Andre's talking about and Dolores met. And that's what we were talking about is based on our budget last year, our current budget that we're in, knowing some changes that will happen for next year. And we ran numbers starting at the 69 cents, not changing it. We looked at changing it a penny, like JH did, started at the bottom up. We looked at the top down. But even if you keep that entire 69 cents, and we didn't look at the personal property and some of these numbers here, you're still 2 million short to cut. So obviously we're going to have to consider this tax increase and the cut, and it's significant on both ends. Significant cuts, and that's not including the three numbers I'm looking at were from a couple of days ago, not even including the 300,000 with registrar. It makes it 2.3 million if we leave the full assessment with real estate. And I'm not looked at what the penny is, and that kind of Doug can jump in on personal property. And like JH mentioned, if we change a penny, every penny on that, public service corp changes. And that is part of the calculation. And it's, if you want to jump in, but that's what I'm looking at. We're looking at an increase, significant, and cuts that are significant to try to get to a balanced budget, or we have to borrow, try to figure out how we borrow money to bridge the gap.
You can get a line of credit. Some places do, but I don't recommend that, but it is available.
No,
But
I would never vote for that. No.
If you don't have enough revenue and you have too much expenses, we've got to look at those. And I've tried to be a quick study. Andre and I've been together constantly since the first of the year. I reached out. Mike has sent information. I've met with Doug and Dolores. It's really a difficult situation that we're in, and we've got to make quick decisions in 2 weeks that are going to carry us into the next fiscal year.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just kind of talking a little bit about the effect that we get from the public service side of things. This is what we've talked about over the past year in terms of the reassessment cycles and things like that. A lot of this, much of this is driven. I'm not trying to pass the buck for us, but much of this is driven by Richmond. The General Assembly mandates the reassessment cycles for every locality, and every locality throughout the Commonwealth. Well, I won't say every. The majority of localities are experiencing the same thing that you're experiencing with the market, the strong housing markets creating a situation where there've been, an anomaly of 35 to 65% increases just because of the housing market. That is what it is. They mandate us to do it. And then on the other side of it, because we're one of 7 localities in the Commonwealth with I'll just call it a energy plant, power plant, we get treated differently by the Department of Taxation. And this you all have heard. I'm sure the majority of the public probably has not heard this. And that is, each year, every locality gets a local ratio established by the Department of Taxation. And that comes about through examining sales studies. So each year, every locality in the Commonwealth, the Department of Taxation says, create a sales study for us and let us see how your tax assessed values are comparing with actual sales of houses and properties in your locality. Well, each year in a cycle, a reassessment cycle, if the market's hot, and it's been hot as a biscuit for the last 24 months or so, it's been unbelievably, just like I said, an anomaly, the likes of I've not seen since I've been in office. So if sales outpace tax assessment, then the Department of Taxation says, here's your local ratio. And last year, our local ratio was 81%. So Richmond, Department of Taxation said, Doug, you and your group are only getting 81% of the true fair market value based upon the sales of properties in Wise County. So what that means to your budget, we calculate that for every percentage point that we drop in that local ratio, it's $100,000 of levy. So last year, if the fair market value that Department of Taxation is saying we got to have, and that the Virginia Code section says we got to have, which is 100%, that's what they say. Commissioners, assessors' offices, you got to get 100% fair market value on these properties. Okay, if that's the case, we lost $1.9 million of levy to public service corporations. Okay, that Wise County taxpayers, I guess, ultimately pick up because we lost that. Now, in all fairness to public service corporations, they pay their taxes and they pay a good amount, but that's just the formula. So what we've done is, as we look at that, we're hoping the Department of Taxation sends that number out to each locality every April 1st. So you're going to be in front of that, setting your budget, and you're not going to know what they give us. I'm going to jump up and down and scream and holler, and just like I have in the past, I tell people, kind of jokingly, but it's the truth. We considered several years ago suing the Department of Taxation. There wasn't an attorney that would take my case, but we did. We called them and we said, you're not following your own rules, your own criteria. We create a sales study, and we have sales that we show that are either qualifying or not qualifying, and you give us the 20 list of criteria and you're not following it. Well, there's pressure. I mean, that's the bottom line. There's pressure. We do our sales study. Public service, the State Corporation Commission has a private contractor that comes in and conducts their sales study. So each year we're like this. I'm saying we're 98%, we're 94%. They're saying, no, you're more like 81%. So I'm not trying to cover my backside here. I'm just telling you the situation that is afoot every year. I say all that to say this. You're going to set your budget, and we're not going to know what kind of ratio they're going to give us on April 1st. I feel like we got 100%. It's not a theoretical number. There are localities that get that 100%. And I just had a conversation with Cynthia Maid from the Department of Taxation on Monday saying, okay, tell me the game. I just want to know the rules here, because we feel like we're 100%, which means, getting back to some of these things, if you go from 81% to 100%, the tax rate being the same, that's very important, then you could pick up $1.9 million. I'm gonna say based upon what we've dealt with in the past, 90 to 95% is all they're gonna give us. I hope they give us more. So at the end of the day, the last thing I would say is this: as you're considering this and you're considering that local ratio, as the tax rate is adjusted, it works both ways. You get increase with increased local ratio, but if you adjust your tax rate down, then you lose that to the public service side. So these are things that are considerations, and I know that's tough on you guys, and I don't envy you on that part. So I just felt like that you needed to hear that there's some play there still to come that we don't have control of.
And to add to that, we're not going to get any revenue from public service until November 27th.
This is correct. That's a great point. So we'll use last year's number, which was, I think, around 8.7 million. And that's what we'll use this year because we don't really know well, they don't report to us until September. And public service has the right to do twice year billing, just like citizens do. So we'll, as we've done in the past several years, we'll take last year's value and we'll just half it. Now, if we're fortunate enough and we get to November and we see that large increase on the local ratio, then you'll have more money. Yeah, you'll have more money, but we just don't know what that is. Thank you.
So we got to be prepared for worst case.
Right.
Scenario is basically that say the 7 we're talking about.
Correct.
The worst case would be the 81.
Yeah, I don't want to go on the record here in front of the camera and everything, but if they can keep us at 81, I don't know. I mean, you'll probably have to come find me.
I wouldn't think, just a personal opinion, somebody knows nothing about it. I don't think they'll keep us at 81 with what I saw on my tax ticket.
Right, exactly. That increase is substantial, and it's based on sales and comparable sales, and we have hundreds of them that across all 4 districts, and you're certainly more than welcome. I know that when we get appeals, we'll be showing them. So.
I'd be willing to stand up with Doug, go to State Corporation Commission, and say, wait, and you come up with 81%.
Exactly. Agree.
Yeah. John, have a comment, but like you want to say something?
But for budgeting purposes, we probably should look at something maybe 81 to 90. Or just say, for budgeting purposes, we're gonna look at 81. And then if we're pleasantly surprised, we get some more money.
I'm kind of looking at 95. That's it, bring us up to 95, and that may be too optimistic. We might ought to drop it down to 90. But with what I've seen, and what calls and concerns I'm getting from citizens, the way their tax tickets are going up, I don't see how certainly don't see how they keep us at 81. I agree with that. Don't see how that can happen.
I don't
think
either.
we'll be realistic in the 90s. I think mid-90s. I'm hoping mid-90s.
Richmond, you never know.
I would not do anything more than 90. Because then if we get something above that, we get a little bit of a surprise.
I've had a bunch of calls. Have y'all had a lot of calls? I've had a bunch.
And just remember, what we're not going to show in revenue that we're bringing in means we're going to have to cut that much more out of each department. So if we don't project it at 95, then that's 5% more that we have to add on for cuts across the board.
Yeah. $100,000 per point in levy.
What is the number for personal property? Have we looked at?
The penny's about $38,000, I think, on tangible personal, and then it drops down. I don't have those numbers in front of me. JH actually may have those numbers, but I think it drops down to to maybe 3,000 and 4,000, 5,000 for M&T, Merchants Capital, something like that. It takes a tremendous increase, and you can't raise your M&T above tangible personal. So that's got to be the majority of it would be the 38,000 per penny on tangible personal, which obviously would include vehicles and boats, aircraft, and things like that with the residents. But it would also include business assets and things like that in the business sector. So 30, yeah.
So let me interrupt you. Would include all these categories that I've got. Just
so each category will have its own. Yeah, it's got its own rate. Yes. So it has its own rate, and then the calculation would be, if you added a penny, would be different than the $38,000 per penny for tangible personal. If you got to Merchants Capital, I think it's like 3,000. M&T might be like 4,000 because that's such a depleted part of assessments these days.
3,000. Yeah.
Here's your tax rate for each category.
Yeah, I've got it.
Yes, personal property, mobile homes get the same rate as real estate. So when you adjust, if you adjust your tax rate on real estate, then personal property, mobile homes get the same thing. I guess it's a significant number, but it's not a lot. You're $2,000 or $3,000 probably per penny.
One thing is on your tangible property, it makes it very difficult is because of the PPTRA
Yes.
involved in that. PPTRA, our tax rate's $1.65, but PPTRA excludes $1.15, which we get from the state. And then the person pays the difference between the 115 and the 165. Very complicated when you go. So it's hard to just say because eligibility and everything's going to vary each year on
Yeah.
whether
And so,
qualifies.
yeah, and so I guess, so last year, I think the personal property tax relief for vehicles was around 45 to 50%. I'm not really sure exactly what that is. That's on, like she said, Treasurer said, that's on the first $20,000 of value set at $1.15. That whole deal, that monster was created, what, in 05? 2000. So anyway, but we get that reimbursement from the state,
That's
It's
a
a
set
million
fund.
380.
it's $1 million.
That's a set fund, too.
It's a set fund. They reimburse, the state reimburses based upon, our fleet, and that's what, that personal property tax relief formula is what it is. And but I think that
was established back in probably 2005 or so.
Yeah.
It never
Gilmore.
changes.
Governor Gilmore.
Well, that's who started the whole PPTRA. But that 1,380,000 was based on a formula at that time, and it's never changed
Never
since then.
Right.
It's always still
Right.
1,380,000.
So the taxpayer in Wise County is getting around 50% off of their personal property tax ticket regarding their vehicles on the first $20,000 of value. Of course, they still pay substantial on those values. But yeah, I wanted to mention that on each rate. If you adjust rates, the effect is there's 3 different effects per tax rates.
And I got with Doug this morning and made some changes on the spreadsheet. I will try to revise the spreadsheet and get it back out to everybody, at least by Monday. Maybe I can do it by tomorrow. But I'll have to have Doug, Andre, and Lois all helping me to get it as accurate as we can. Other thing I want to bring up that we heard in public expression was we have a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck on fixed incomes. And they were asking, was there anything we could do for our senior population and the disability? And as I understand it now, that income is like 42,000 to qualify. And of course their age and disability is 100% to get to qualify. And I think right now we're giving them $100 discount, $200 discount. So if we want to adjust that, then that's gonna impact this rate, how much more we have to add to that. So that's something I think as a board, we need to talk about, come up with as per setting this tax rate.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just that figure for you, we calculate not only the senior and disability, but also veterans is about $370,000 right now to the budget. So I think that's it.
Yeah, which I have it in the numbers that I've prepared. I took that off in your increase. But if you increase that amount, then of course that's going to take off of the amount of tax that we would collect. So that's what you got to look at.
Yeah, we have to consider that. So
We do. I think that's a big consideration.
we heard it, and I just want to say that if we're gonna do that, then that's gonna impact this tax rate. We got to know what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it. We're gonna change the thresholds to 42,000. We're gonna do that and change the $200. We're gonna change the $200. There's several variables there that we can look at, but we're gonna have to know what the bottom line is as we're trying to project revenue. I guess I need to look at the list, but I think I'm probably.
And Mr. Chairman, we're talking about with that exemption, we have talked to the commissioner about that. And we have a couple options. You're talking about the qualifiers with income and different things. However, we have the option, and we're talking about the amount. It's very difficult if we change the 42. We don't really know what that will open up, how many, if we would increase that to 50. However, if we give that deduction or exemption or that credit, we change it from 200 to 250 or 300, we can kind of know. Yes, I think.
Yeah, and the veterans exemption is 100%. So that's already in there.
And disability too.
The disability is $200
Okay.
right now. And as Ms. Mullins said, we can calculate what a $100 increase, taking it from 200 to 300 would be. There's no way to calculate if you adjust thresholds, which like Mr. Rivers said, we're at 42,000 on income and 85,000 on assets, not counting your home. So you take that out of the equation, and if you have your checks, savings, vehicles, additional property, it affects that $85,000 amount. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. One last thing I will say as for your consideration is those individuals who are getting the senior and disability exemptions, many of them, it covers up to $200 for the year. Many of them have a majority or all of their real estate tax liability covered in that $200. Depending on what you do with tax rates, these assessment values and things like that, most likely it would move some of those, maybe most of those, out of that situation where they would have to start paying if you did not do an increase, but for whatever amount. And I'm not sure we might be able to make that determination. I'll have my staff look at it.
One thing I might add too, if you're looking at the income level, looking at it the way he's talking about just changing the rate would affect the same people.
Right.
Changing the income level, you would be opening it up to more people possibly getting it. I don't know which is the option you want to look at. Maybe the 42,000 is too low for our area or something. But one way is only going to hit the same people that's getting it now, and the other way would hit more people in the community.
That's correct.
Any other thoughts? on-
300, you go from 200 to 300, is that what the thought process is?
Yeah. Or 250?
I think that's what Doug is saying, and
Yeah,
he can give us those numbers if, just like we're looking at a penny here, on these different things, that's a number that we can kind of, know better. And then the same thing, if we're looking at our budgets, we're gonna have to look at those budgets. And if we're looking at such significant reductions in the budget numbers, we probably need to do that sooner than later so we can notify departments that may be affected that this is coming, because July 1 will be here before we know it. And, you know, if it affects how they operate their office or what their future plans would be, we need to give as much notice as we can for that.
Has anybody turned in their request for next year to you yet?
No, we had sent those out last Friday, so they're and asked for it to be returned by the 23rd, which historically you don't see anything but increases. We've sort of laid the groundwork that we normally would send out your budget, the justification of any modifications to your budget up or down, and then a personnel sheet. Omitted the personnel sheet this year because I felt like that's off the table. I mean, best case scenario would be a COLA if that's even possible. So don't submit anything any different in your personnel unless you're losing a person and not planning on replacing them, but there should be no additions there. But I fully expect to see no reductions and possibly increase. I mean, I know one increase with the registrar, there's nothing I can do, that she can do about that. But that's typically what we would come to you, that we refer to as the wish list, and we started backing off at that point. And I'll say that, you know, since I've been working on this, I've worked outside of the personnel side of the budgets. They weren't getting anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. But not to say that there's still not room to trim. I know there is. There's always room. But most of them operate, as far as operating the offices, there's not a lot of, in that we're not going to see significant gains by cutting office supplies or categories like that. We know that.
Well, I think some of our gains are gonna be like in, let's see. Maybe economic development, department, community organizations, cultural organizations. That's where we need to work.
I did receive a request, and it's a traditional, annual request from, I'll call it a county agency. I don't really think it's a county agency, and that's one thing that I guess we would need some direction on as far as what we have budgeted in the past. And I don't want to specifically name these places, but they may not be mandated. We've always contributed that, and that would go along with, hey, if we're not going to fund this, we need to notify these people. Yes, we received your request, and it's may not be under consideration at this point.
That's somewhere we can go that doesn't affect any of our personnel so far. Take that off the top and then see where we're at. And I know a lot of community organizations have depended on this for years, but I think we're going to where I think we can afford it. And I think most of the people in the county know that.
And again, that's one of the things that we need to look at, because a lot of different agencies, groups, departments have already budgeted. So it's already been worked into the budget, and we've approved our budget. So if we want to make changes in this budget, we really need to give notice that if we're using this budget to look where we're at for the next budget, we need to look at those. And I know we've heard from each of the department heads, and I was in some of those meetings. But I think we're going to have to go back and look at those budgets as a board, because we're where we're at.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna be pleasant, but I think that we've got to look at that to see if there's any other places that we can look, and if nothing else, plan for next year. Because I don't know, Andre, this year, how much we can cut here in January. Maybe it's gonna have
Stuff's
to be,
already been appropriate.
I'd rather look at next year.
I think, any request that you get, like you're talking about, is you just tell them that we're in a budget crunch, and they may or may not receive funding. And that at least lets them know that they need to plan on something else.
You're probably talking about level funding each department. I guess that's what you call it, if you level fund them, but.
Well, no,
We
We
can't do
We
that.
can't level fund.
No.
That's what we're saying, it's gonna have to be a cut, so it's gonna have to come down. And then we as a board, in my opinion, are gonna have to, once we know what this revenue is gonna be, we're gonna have to break that down to each one of these categories or departments or whatever we wanna call them. 50-some pages in that budget that we're gonna have to make adjustments to.
Yeah, I think that hits what Karen was talking about, that we're gonna have to meet with the departments and at least some hard decisions there.
And what I want that done, John, it has to be their decision.
And
We decide what the budget is, and they have to decide what to do,
that's right.
what adjustments they make.
Here's a box that has X number of dollars or X% of our budget. You decide how you want to spend it.
Some departments are already probably at their bare minimum. Some will be better off than others. Some can't cut. I mean, some can't.
and I think that's where the decision's gonna have to be made. It's gonna be difficult, because some have come up and cut, and some are that they can't cut more, and some have more room to
Yeah.
address that. And I think
Yes.
that's what we're gonna have to look at. I don't think just to say we're gonna do 1% for every department. And we've looked at that here in the last 2 weeks and looked in there. We're gonna have to go back in and look at each of the departments and look at the budget for that, which goes back to the transparency question of how much are we spending in each of these categories to look at. And I think that's what we're gonna have to look at to see how much we are spending in each of these categories and what we have to do going forward in the next budget.
We won't have our school composite number till what, March?
we have the composite numbers, we just don't have their budget. And there will be a
Put it down.
there'll be a reconciliation for this year. I mean, I hope not, but there's always that possibility too, that we could be required more funding for them based on states, well, the state's final reconciliation. So that's what the reconciliation marks, that's always a possibility. Hopefully we don't see that. When we are talking about the different departments, and we've got 2 constitutional officers with us here today. You have disproportionate sizes in your constitutional office. We know that, and that's why, and since we have so many mandated, I mean, I shared with Rusty, and this was high level, rough numbers, $40 million of our budget is mandated that we don't have control over. So when you say, ideally, people want to say, well, I want to see 10% cuts across your budget. It's not feasible.
Yeah.
And it's not feasible to say 10% is going to look different for these 2 offices versus a lot of offices. And when you get back to funding, saying this is how much we're going to fund you, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, as far as the school board budget goes, as far as these constitutional offices goes, once you appropriate those funds to those officers, to those offices, or to that institution as far as school goes, it's theirs to do with.
Yeah.
And so the only control you have over is the funding piece. And then again, they're going to know how they can operate their offices, departments, but a lot better than we do.
No doubt.
So
But if you're saying that $40 million is mandated, and we're looking at going to 64 million, then what we need to look at as far as cutting, we can't cut mandated.
But there's been discussion, I think, I've heard many times that, again, across the board cut, it's not feasible. So you have a very, it's still significant, but a smaller portion of your overall budget where you can even seek reductions.
Well, that 24 million difference there, we need to identify that and say, okay, this is where we can expect cuts. Because if it's mandated, you're not gonna cut anything.
But a lot of that's with the school system, you can't.
A lot of the school system that we've mentioned, regional jail, and that's social services, health department, behavioral health. There's things that, we do not have control over funding either from a, regulatory or contractual agreement. So those are off the table.
Yeah.
C&W is a mandated expense.
That's a contractual agreement. We already know preliminarily that that's going to go up. We have that figure. I think there are some possibilities on the table for us potentially for some relief there. Nothing guaranteed, but I mean, you could, best case scenario, you're probably looking at least the level of funding, and that's $50,000 a month. So you're over $500,000 right there for a service that's not flashy, but it allows people to flush their toilets.
And I asked this to what I understood that when I was on the PSA board, we have been discussing maybe PSA can pick up a portion of that expense. And they're willing to look at that, but at this point, we don't know this coming year. They can't pick up all of it, and they shouldn't pick up all of it because that doesn't talk about that in some other place. But they maybe can pick up a portion of it, and until they get more into their budget, we don't know. But hopefully that will help us out to be a substantial amount that we can look at it and say.
Preliminarily, with their budget, they have advertised their budget, and that's not set for approval until February. But you're looking at a $26,000 overall annual increase. Doesn't sound like much, but for us right now, that's significant. Yeah. I mean, and we've significantly funded right
Board, what do we need before we set this tax rate? What other information do you have to know, do you want to feel comfortable in deciding how we set the tax rate?
We're going to do that next week. We're going to do it today, are we?
No, I'm not ready. I don't know we'll go about today. If I revise my spreadsheet, send that back to you. We've got to know whether it's going to be 64, 71, or how many million we're going to start out at the bottom line with. Yeah, I've got to know that. I'm just going to say now, I'm hoping we're 71, 71 and a half. If we're 64, obviously no way we can't do it. So we've got to start with it. Every how we make that revenue work, we've got to start with a realistic number that our citizens can live with, and if we can live with
Yeah,
it.
we can go out to eat and not live. People follow you. Yeah. People follow me, come to the bathroom at Walmart, talk about the taxes.
Now, Andre and I can do this sheet that what I read off to you earlier. This was with that amount of change. Now, we can redo each column with a different amount so you can see the bottom line using the expenditures we have right now, if that might help.
And I started that.
Yeah.
Just based on what I could, but yeah, I think that would be a good document.
What I did was create a template more or less, so now we can go in and change any revenue, whatever we think is good or bad, and change the rate so it'll come up with a different bottom line number. So Andre will be able to use it every time you all want to come up with a change. All he has to do is go in.
I like to keep things simple. So on my Excel spreadsheet, what I did was list the category, what the current year is, and then what I propose it to be. And a lot of it I just had to carry forward, but where I made changes, I highlighted in a different code. So,
Basically, what we did was just eliminate the previous, that past budget. Because it was so many errors and stuff in it,
I did
we
that
didn't
too.
want to
I
use it.
just took it completely out.
Yeah, so we started with the new budget, new year, start with what we know, what we're looking at changing the tax rates to, and going from there. Most of everything else is kind of staying the same till we get some more information about sales tax and things like that. But at least we can change the property taxes and stuff.
But, right, that's all we can do.
Yeah.
Some of those sales tax stuff, we won't know.
Right.
The end of this month.
But that's how I came up with that number at the bottom. But that's all new numbers, nothing, I'm not even looking back at this past year except to look at seeing what I'm gonna have at the end of the year.
All I did was carry numbers forward. And then make an adjustment on these things. So that's why I came up with some different numbers. But yeah. So I think with that document, with the 1 cent document, maybe those would be the two things. Does everybody feel pretty comfortable? We have that information. We have to make a decision.
And you did say that we've not had a tax increase in 9 years.
That's
Right.
what I understand. I think that's
You're talking
right.
about real estate,
Yeah, 17 or 19.
5 years ago,
We had a reassessment,
yeah,
but you didn't change the tax rate.
but we went up.
You did 7 cents something, 4, 3, 1.
That's-
2, 3,
I
and
think
2.
Yeah,
2 went in general budget, 3 went in school debt, and 2 went in economic development. So it was a 7 cent increase at that time.
5 years ago.
I think
yeah, that's what I was going by. I think Andre or Mike told me that it was like 5 years ago. That's why we was trying to go back to that 2 cent rate, so 3 cent and 2 cents, get that 5 back. It's
So
just,
see, and this is just one person, one board member's opinion, but I think that's where we got into some trouble. We set that tax rate and we specified where pennies were going. And I assumed that when we were taking money out of school debt to balance the budget, that 3 cents was going back into that budget. And I assumed that it would be pulled out when taxes come in July or whenever. But when I asked Mike that question in December, I found out that really what happens, it gets rectified when they do the audit. So if there's not money to put 3 cents in there, which there wasn't, then that's where we eliminated that fund without me knowing it. Maybe I should have somehow tried to figure that out. I didn't know that that's what was happening. And I think that's how, because we started out with $13 million in that fund, in schools debt service fund. And we whittled some out of it initially, but then for the 25 budget, we dipped into it 4 million. The 26 budget, we dipped into it another 4 million. Well, I thought it was going up 3 cents every year, and it wasn't. So I think that's why we're hearing Dolores say right now, we may be at 13 million, barely over our 15% that we're required to maintain.
It's kind of like what I was explaining, when we talk about fund balance, all the revenue and expenses runs into fund balance. So whatever profit you have, profit or loss, that's what makes up your fund balance. And it's like a pot of money. Now, what you all did was kind of carve out. You said, I want to take this money and carve out here for debt service, carve out this amount for the rainy day and blighted property. But what you weren't considering is you were pulling out this money, but you never changed your numbers here. But all it was doing was decreasing, the pot of money was decreasing. So you were pulling that money out of those funds, just out of your fund balance, which pulled it out of your other funds too, because you only have one pot of money. You might divide it up on paper, but it's still only one pot. That's why I keep giving you all the cash balance. That's your pot of money.
Will have our auditors failed us?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
No.
They've not,
No,
His question was, have our auditors failed us?
No, they've audited the numbers. I mean, they don't care whether you overspend or whatever. That's up to, they usually put a notation. There is in the letter, if you overspent your budget, that is in there, and it's always in there. But that's the only thing. Until you get into trouble, someone mentioned in the board meeting last week about the distressed localities. Did we understand about them? I understand because I've been sent into some of them to help them. Normally, what triggers that, it's a new thing they just put into place a couple of years ago, the APA. What triggers it though is if you're behind on your audit reports. Some localities get 2 and 3 years behind without having an audit. We have some towns now that are kind of in that shape. But a lot of cities, especially up in the northern section, they do that. They'll be 3 and 4 years behind. That's what sticks them into that. That's the first thing that notifies them that they're in distress. There's nothing wrong with you spending all your money. It just means you may have to borrow money. The auditors don't really care if you have to audit or borrow money. They just, they're not looking for that. But they will look to see if you overspent your budget.
We heard about the audit last week.
the IDA audit was presented last night. So our auditor would have that was the holdup that we were waiting. And of course, a lot of that was driven by the government shutdown in the fall and single audit guidance. So, but the caveat with that is it was earliest last week when our auditor received their information. And it has to go through their quality review, and we have been bumped in line a few times for the localities that were more ready for review than what we were. Yeah, a couple things I would add to what Laura said. I think with our auditor's presentations to the board the last few years, I think there has been some cautionary discussion about depletion of general funds available, uncommitted funds. And we've had discussions with them because we wanted that highlighted. And I've shared with many of you, and if you just look at this high level, since our last tax increase in 19, and we know as accountants, a snapshot, a balance sheet, your income statement, it's a period of time, okay, here's where you are. We've not had any revenue increases to speak of if you exclude casino money. But some of the big ticket items that I've shared with you guys, where there has been no replacement of that revenue because there has been no additional revenue come in. So that's that's why we have seen our general fund degraded, and whether you allocated so many cents toward debt service or economic development or however you voted, and we have had that service in our operational budget that we've had sent out the door of anywhere from 4 to 5 million, over that time period each year. You are spending and allocating toward debt service. So there was just so much money coming in, and it was being spent. And at that period of time, when you allocated that toward debt service, you had not allocated. I'd share some numbers on the cost of the vehicle purchases, or I would say purchase payments, debt service payments over the years, cost of COLAs, cost of health insurance. Those are some big drivers right there. That that's where your $6 million is. And there's many other things that would contribute to that over that time frame. If you want to look at some big drivers, there it is. Those funds were never replaced or replenished because we didn't have revenue coming in to replenish them.
Anybody else have anything on the mind they want to bring forward? So we're going to modify a couple of documents, get those documents back to everybody. And I guess the other piece that we have to know is where's our starting point? 64 million, 71 million, 73 million, 83 million.
We do. We need to know that.
We have to know that.
Yeah.
be 64, that sounds extremely low.
And the lower it is, either we
The
have to
deeper
raise
cuts.
taxes or we have to cut the deeper cuts.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll try to get realistic, how soon can we get some of this off? Can it be, well, Monday's a holiday.
Yeah.
So Tuesday, could we commit to Tuesday to have revised documents, everybody, is that realistic, or do we need Wednesday next week?
Yeah, I'm having my windows put in tomorrow, and so that, I don't know how many days they're gonna be, so they're taking over my office. I'm not going in there with no windows now. But I think Andre and they'll be able to work on it together.
One question with that, so what we had prepared today was kind of based on our discussions from yesterday at 63 cents being the rate. Those revenues at 63 cents. So what scenarios do we want to have to prepare? Do we want to go at what increments from 55 cents up to 69 do you want to see? A cent on every one, 5 cent increments? So we would need some direction on
Yeah.
what we're projecting.
How many columns do you want us to make?
I mean, you could start, I mean, theoretically, we could start at what levels are today at 55 cents.
Yeah.
Have a column going all the way up to 69 for each cent increment or 5 cent increment.
I
2 cent
just thought it
increment.
was at 63, because I don't know that I can go any further than that,
We
but
get
I
69,
don't have the full picture,
still
so.
be able to live in this.
No, we can't, no.
Again,
Not
what
69.
we started out is, if we were at 69, we're still $2 million short.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to recognize where we're at, and that's what we ran into when I started sitting down with Doris and Andre and looking at the budget we got, the miscalculations that were in budget that we were working under now. And if we stayed at 69, we're still $2 million short. So with everything that we go down to 68, down to 63, then we're the bottom line is going up unless we have a cut. And we've already talked to all these departments to say, how can you cut? Because we're in a crisis and we've not gotten anything. So we know that we're gonna have to make, you guys are gonna have to make those cuts. And at 63, I don't know if we have a rough number, if that puts us at $5 million, or $6 million.
Yeah, that's what I gave you just.
I've got 4.3.
Okay, so that's Doris's new numbers. I don't know
Yeah.
that I got a copy of that this morning, but, so that's, if we're down at 63 with the other numbers, then we've got to find $4 million plus to cut. And we've already been talking to people for 2 months that it's not there. If we think it is, you know, can we cut $1 million, $2 million? Are we realistically going to be able to cut $4 million from these departments that you all talked to in multiple meetings?
That number's best case scenario too. That, I mean, I don't think either one of us would put our name on that number because we don't, there's too much information we don't know.
Yeah, we don't have everything.
I mean, that's.
We don't know, we
Yeah,
don't
there's a
know
lot
about
of unknown.
insurance. We don't know about.
And realistically, that number is going to grow.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it just,
And one thing but also he was talking about the increments. The number I gave you was based on 3 cents for personal property. We can go 1, 2, 3. Do you want me to go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or just?
No.
Because we're gonna have a lot of scenarios with the real estate going up. I just didn't know if you wanted to take personal property.
You know, go ahead, John.
One of the big questions I've been getting is, how did my property go from this amount to this amount? What kind of criteria? How was the assessment made? you could give us some information on that.
That's been a big question. People call me.
Yeah.
How did you know it was 35?
Yeah.
Why wasn't it 22?
Right.
How come it wasn't?
And our general reassessment, like every other locality, is based on sales. So we have hundreds of sales over the past 18 months. We started this in August of 24. And so as I talked about earlier, you have a tax assessed value last year or 18 months ago when we started looking at all these sales. And we have them. We certainly can produce them. We can show you tangible evidence of these sales. And as we've talked in here before, you've had a market over the past 2 years to 4 years, arguably, where I think one of you said this in a prior meeting, actually buyers are buying properties unseen. So you get on your national website, you get on Zillow or whatever, we've literally had an influx of people into the area coming from other parts of the country who see our tax assessed value at $210,000, $220,000. The asking price is, and you can go online and look at it, look at the tax assessed value last year, the asking price, maybe double, $400,000. They settle in on about $385,000. I heard some or read some or whatever. Gentleman moved in from out of the area, just, talking and certainly concerned about these values as others are, and saying, I don't understand. With all due respect, you contributed to that situation by coming in and giving 85% more than we had it assessed for on the open market. And now that value is my property on South Mountain Road went up $75,000 in this general reassessment, just because of comparable sales. Properties like mine selling in the county, my assessors look at those properties and say, well, a property like yours, we have 4, 5, 6 sales in the county that demonstrate it sold for, on the average, of $70,000 more than what we have you assessed at. So that's what drives our numbers. It's not a guess. It's kind of like the pricing guide on the other side with personal property, JD Power, on vehicles. People got, you remember when it got really intense a couple years ago, because the values of used vehicles actually appreciated for the first time I've ever seen. And people were calling some people call in and they're very reasonable. And by and large, the calls we've had, we're averaging about 50 to 75 a day. The calls we've had have been very reasonable, and we appreciate it. We've compared this to the 2009 year where we had our first general reassessment and the national market had just tanked in 2008. And because we went back 24 months or whatever in our sales, and we put our value out there, and it was a 15% increase. I'll never forget, I had a call from a lady who was out of the area, owned property here, and said, so Commissioner Mullins, explain to me how the national market tanked, but this is what she said, I'll never forget, it's the first time I'd ever heard the word, but in Podunk, Wise County, you gained 15%. I took exception to it once I looked that up because it was not a positive term. And so at the end of the day, that's how these sales, the sales location drives sales, and the outside market has driven those sales prices in every locality. Last thing, I will just say, you can go to my website. We had it up on in the Cofield. Also, if you look at all the surrounding localities, I can't remember these numbers specifically, but Tazewell in the last 2 years, 22%. Dickinson County, average increases, in the last 2 years, 43%. Lee County in the last 2 years, 46%. Smith County, 50. City of Bristol, 50. Washington County last year, or in the last 2 years, average increase in Washington County, 67%. So it's not like that this is, we came up with this number. It's independent. Your budget, my assessments are independent of each other. I know there's some conspiracy theorists out there who think we've all conspired to do what we've done. That's just ridiculousness. I mean, we did our assessment based on sales, and we have the credible evidence. Now, I will say this. If you feel like that your home value is way beyond what you would sell it for, or we've made an error, come on in. We want to get it right. Do an appeal with us. We certainly will take a look at it. But that's the deal that has driven the whole process.
Dave, I can add a couple of things to that. One of the comments I'm getting is mobile homes. The pressure they should depreciate. One specific individual told me that their prior assessment was $4,000, and it got raised to $14,000. So that begs the question, how is mobile homes appreciating that much when typically you think they depreciate?
Yeah, and that's a very good question. It's a fair question, because we certainly look at particularly single-wide mobile homes, which are mostly picked up on personal property side, not the real property side. However, the state code says you shall conduct a general reassessment. It doesn't say you may. You shall conduct it. And when you do, you shall pick up personal property mobile homes with it. And so what happens is, you've had a value on that mobile home, and it's been depreciating over the years. When it gets picked up during general reassessment, a new value is associated with that mobile home, and you start a whole separate line of depreciation. Now, should he call us, or should she call us? Sure, call us, and let's see if there might be things. And people have to remember, and I think most of the people know this, we don't go into properties. We either drive to properties. We have 2 assessors in the field for 30,000 parcels. We drive to properties and look at them. We did a lot of that. And we also have some excellent technology that utilizes a 4-dimensional flyover, which allows us to view those properties as well. So it was a combination, a hybrid approach to that joint assessment.
And as citizens, the first step would be to come to you.
Yes, call us.
Ask for an appeal, but then if they're not satisfied with that, then we as a board will establish an equalization committee.
Correct.
That they
Board of
can go to
Equalization.
if they're not satisfied with what you tell.
Yeah, 3 steps. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, only other thing I want to question someone that can help me. We're going to make those appointments to the equalization board. Is it March, or we're going to do it in February? When does that board get established, and when can they start filling to that board?
I think that we are probably looking at those board members and trying to reach out the next 2 to 3 weeks to do that. So, if you've got some names in mind, if, whatever the case, I don't know that statute actually says that the Board of Supervisors does that, but at the same time, maybe collectively we can work together on doing that. And we need 1 per district. Yes, sir. It's got to go before the judge, who signs off on
I think they're named in March, and they work for 6 months.
it. Yeah, that's probably right. Our appeals will go through the last 3rd week or 4th week of February. We're already scheduling appeals right now. And just as I told you earlier in the year, the last 2 reassessment cycles, we handled a lot of appeals in office, and we can take care of a lot of those things. If there's been an error, we'll take care of it. And I'll just tell you right now, and this is with all due respect, humility, and I'm not trying to be mean or ugly. If you just feel like your taxes are going up too much, there's not a thing I can do for you. But if you come in with your paperwork and say you made an error on my value. We want to fix it. We do. There's a big difference between my taxes are too high and my value's wrong. I'm driven by 100% fair market value. And if you can show that that's not the case, certainly you need to do it.
Now, it seems the market for the last at least 3-4 months or so, it is collapsing and retracting. Is that going to be taken into account?
In the next reassessment. Yeah, that's a good
Because I
point.
got 3 houses in the neighborhood that's been, before they'd sell within a day or two.
Yeah.
Now, some have been on the market 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, it's definitely
They're
slowed.
going to have to drop those prices.
Yeah. It's slowed, and maybe some of I think maybe we're seeing like we did with the automobile market. Now you're starting to get some incentives to buy those automobiles, whereas it was the case 2 or 3 years ago. You called the market and they said, no, you'll give MSRP plus $2,000 if you want this vehicle. And so that's kind of the way it's been in the housing market. Is you for the most part, it's been wonderful for sellers. They've been getting asking price plus. But I think you're right. I think turnaround slowed and prices are slowing, but they're still exceeding what we had on assessed values last year. People won't want to hear that, but that's true. I personally, and I don't say this flippantly, I'm being very sincere. There's equity. On the good side of that, there's equity as you go to lending institutions and try to leverage. You have equity, but I understand the whole picture. Anything else?
So if we stay with biennium, more than likely in 2 years, prices will go down.
It's possible. Don't know what the market will do. Sometime we had that balloon years ago. I was serving on the real estate appraiser board in Richmond, and I heard all of those experts talking about, the bust is coming, the crash is coming, and then it happened in 08. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's very possible that it could change. And if it changes, we'll change it. We'll take it down. We just want 100%.
Chairman, I'd like to add one thing. A moment ago, when I was giving you those numbers, when I've got spreadsheets where I was putting in different numbers myself, Chairman had mentioned 8 cents across the board to me yesterday. And I think on your sheet you had 8 cents. The numbers that I gave you that were still low of 4,307,000. That is really an 8-cent increase in real estate and 8 cents on personal property. So it was 8 cents across the board. So that's only 61 cents on your real estate.
Right.
So actually we could, taking it up to 63, but I will give you a spreadsheet on each one that comes up. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that I picked up the wrong number.
Probably help us over $1 million. The other thing I want to caution or is concern of mine, when we raise real estate, there's a large impact on large percentage versus when we increase personal property vehicles, it's probably hitting 100% of our citizens. So if we go more, I'm trying to keep it equal, 8 cents here, 8 cents on personal property. If you took personal property up to 12 or 15 cents, that's a tremendous impact on some of the people, on 100% of the people.
They don't pay real estate, they're don't own property.
They don't own property. It's kind of more fair, more equitable, but it puts a big burden on the ones that's on a fixed income.
Yes.
So I think we have to be careful. What I was trying to do was kind of make it equal across the board. We don't have to. If you go up 12 or 15 cents on personal property, but that's it.
I don't think we want to do
Let's
that.
don't do this.
I did. That's why I just wanted to express that's why I kept doing something. Oh, yeah. This is just a starting point. You can change any of these numbers any way you want to. Any other comments? So we're going to try by next Wednesday to have some revised numbers to everybody.
Andre will email them out to you when we finish.
Okay, next on the agenda is appointment to the MECC, Empire Community College Board, the District 2 appointment. This is where Mike Canfield left the county. Is District 2 ready to make an appointment? If you're not, do you want to table it?
Can a board member take it?
I didn't hear you say.
Can a board member take it?
No. Well,
What do you
I don't
got?
I
think so.
don't think we've either gotten
You
into.
got something?
I'd have to look at that for a bit, I don't think so. We've always
think
agreed.
so. It's-
Okay. I got some
There's
things.
a lot of restrictions on who can serve
I
on
like
the
to be
board.
on there
What
because
board is
there's
it?
a lot of improvements they can make to their
Then
website.
Steve,
Are you putting Steve on
Steve, I
there?
would be willing to serve on that board again if you need me. I'm in your district.
Yeah.
I used to be on it, but then I moved from fourth district to
Yeah.
second district. So I had to come off. So I know I can serve, but they know to put me on. Back and forth.
You haven't taught classes, or you have been an adjunct or anything, have you? Because they won't.
Not
let
in
no out.
years. I taught when 48 come in, but I had already taught when I was on board before.
Well,
So if that's a new
Dr.
rule, then
Westover.
I rescind my offer.
Dr. Westover is real sensitive
Okay.
on, if anybody's been an adjunct faculty member, she has said, no, we cannot appoint.
Okay.
And I know that for a fact.
That's fine, that's fine. I just knew I had
I'm
some.
not
you
trying
vote
to
on your
say
mind?
you-
Knock me up,
I'm
thank you.
just telling you,
I said,
we've been through this discussion very recently.
Yeah, that's, I haven't been on it. for
yeah. We'll take it.
So
Deborah
Steve's
Horton
making a motion to table.
has an interest.
Hmm.
Deborah Horton, Sam's Deborah.
Yeah, yeah.
She went to school down there.
Table it right now.
It came to me yesterday. We can table it if you want to and handle it next time.
Bob, are you willing to table it? Steve said table it. So you make the second to that motion?
I will.
All in favor of tabling this, indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? It's tabled till you all make a decision. Closed session. Do we need closed session?
I don't have anything for a closed session. We kept that on there in case there was any questions or how far we dug into the budget.
We'll talk about computer.
Okay, let's, and I think that could come under personnel.
Yes.
So let's, go into closed session. And I'll just read them off to cover us. I need a motion to go in closed session under section 2.2-3711, A6, investing in public funds, A7, consultation with legal counsel, and A1, personnel.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Schoolcraft made the motion. I heard Mr. Carter made the second. Any discussion? All in favor of going in closed session, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in. I need a motion to return to open session.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion from Mr. Schoolcraft, a second from Mr. Carter. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're back in open session now. We need a certified closed session. Someone is.
Mr. Chairman, I'll do that. Certification of closed meeting. Today's date is January the 15th, 2026. Whereas the Wise County Board of Supervisors has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Wise County Board of Supervisors that such meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. And now therefore it be resolved that the Wise County Board of Supervisors hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters that were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Wise County Board of Supervisors. Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion. Need a roll call.
Randy,
Yes.
Rusty,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Bob, Steve, Chairman.
Yes. Next, board comments, member have comments they want to make. Then our next item to discuss is we need to recess this meeting so we can set a tax rate prior to the end of January. What's the desire? When can we meet again? We want to look at that last week, give us as much time to get information as possible.
Yes.
Then we need to look at that last week and probably the first 2 or 3 days are the only options we have, Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday an option, rest of
Yes.
so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
It'll be during the daytime like it was
Be
today.
doing that tonight like this.
Wednesday the 28th. That gives us maximum time and allows you your time.
28th on Wednesday. Want to do it at the same time, 10 o'clock
And here,
here? Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Then I need a motion.
28th on Wednesday, 28th of January.
Motion to
10
recess
a.m.
this meeting until the 28th of January at 10 o'clock at the courthouse.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Schoolcraft made the motion, Mr. Peters made the second. Is that agreeable? Anybody have a conflict with that? All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are recessed.
What's the date?
The 28th, Wednesday. Last Wednesday of the month.
10 a.m.
What are we gonna do, 10